Hi, Eden. How are you today? You already opened the room. Okay.
Yes, I didn't know what I had to do.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah. Can you click on my profile and make me a moderator? It's if you click on my profile all the way on the bottom. Yep, perfect. Thank you. How are you? How was your weekend?
Good, good.
Hi, Akira. How are you? Akira will be a guest speaker um later on. So
Great.
thanks. Wait, let me get your slides. So I'll mute myself for a couple of minutes. I'll add your slides and things like that.
Mhm.
Okay. Hi everyone. We'll start in around 8 minutes. So thank you for coming. And yeah, we will start soon. Oh, there are the slides. Perfect. we'll start in 5 minutes. Yeah, I posted all the links, so are you do? Thank you for coming again, Irene, and yeah, I hope you're enjoying your summer. Is it
Yeah,
going
thanks.
well? Um, I don't know if the weather is nice in Bern, but it's a nice city. Are you there in the summer too, or?
Right now, yes. So it's been raining quite a lot lately, actually, but it's also warm. Like last year, we had floodings in the river, and it was very cold, so we couldn't really enjoy much the summer. But this summer is better.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's such a nice city. My family, we used to go a lot. We had friends living there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But yeah, Switzerland is nice. I like it a lot. I would
Yes,
travel. Yeah, go ahead.
actually, for my postdoc, I'm planning to go to New York, so
Oh,
I
nice.
will get to know your cities.
Where are you going to New York? Like to which university?
To Colombia.
Nice. That's wonderful. Um, yeah. When are you going to start? Do you know already, or is it? Will it?
Not yet. Probably more towards the end of the year or so. Depends of the scholarship, which I still don't know when that will be, but hopefully not too far in the future.
I hope you don't come in the in the worst winter. This happened when I moved back to the US for my postdoc. I moved during the worst winter. I moved to Massachusetts, and it was one of the coldest and worst winters
Oh no.
in I don't know how many years, with the most snow, and the ocean froze actually.
What? Wow.
Yes, it was crazy. People could play on the poor ducks and everything. They were frozen, and when we came outside, I don't know.
Oh.
Was an adventure. So I hope your winter won't be like this when you move.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll be all good.
There was also, I before coming to Bern, I was working in the Kalahari Desert, and I went from summer in the desert to winter in Switzerland. It was quite also a difference.
Oh wow, yeah, definitely. That's a big difference. Yeah, it's but we get used to it fast, no? I think.
Oh, I don't know. I'm from the south of Europe, and I'm always cold, so winter is difficult for me. But yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I'm from Portugal originally, but I grew up.
So you know.
Yeah, but I grew up a lot in Germany, so I kind of got training while growing up. So, but yeah, but it's not as cold where I grew up in Germany as it gets here in the winter sometimes. It's very funny. It's very hot in the summer in New York, and like we have really hot summers, and the fall is really nice because then it's not as hot anymore, but still very pretty. And then the winters are usually very, very cold. Although the last few winters there was way less snow and less cold. So I guess that's a trend now. We had a room last week about climate, and we shouldn't like say that's an exception anymore. We just have to say that this is normal now.
Yeah, just getting more common these extreme weathers now with climate change. So
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, oh, I think we can start. We can slowly start, and yeah, I'll introduce you. Welcome everyone to the Science Society. Thank you so much for coming, Irene, to talk with us here today. And let me introduce you a little bit to the audience here. Before you can, you start your presentation about your really interesting work. So, Irene García-Ruiz, she's currently at the University of Bern, and her dissertation program is about mechanisms that shape the evolution of cooperative breeding, with Professor Michael Taborski. And she did her degree in biology at the University of Valencia, and her master's in science at the University of Exeter in animal behavior. And she received the Dean's Commendation Prize for her thesis. And she is very interested in bigger questions regarding evolution and animal behavior, and especially she is interested in studying social adaptations that shape social interactions between animals, also sexual selection and cognition. And we are very glad you're here today. And before we go to your presentation, if it's okay, I would ask you a more general question. But if you don't feel like you have like a good answer, we can also skip that. Or if it's not something you like too much to answer, but is there like how did you discover basically that you would like to work in this field? Was there maybe a professor or some book, or something that inspired you to go into this field or to become a scientist in general? I think that's interesting for younger people that just start their career. So
So I always been very interested in animals in general since I was a kid, and I was also in the scouts, and I used to go a lot to the mountain, and I really like to observe animals, and I noticed that you could understand a bit their aim sometimes, right, and that we were not that different, and I was always very interested to see this commonality between humans and other animals. And that was like maybe the first thing. Then when I was university, there was a talk by a professor on animal behavior. And then is when I found like, okay, this is the thing I want to spend my life of. I was always very interested in psychology, and this was like somehow related, but more in the field that I was more interested in. And yeah, in general, I was interested in big questions that why do we behave the way we do? What moves us? Why we are the way we are? And with we, I mean not just humans, but other animals. So yeah, more or less that would be the reason why I started this. One of the books that really moved me was The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. Explains very well the underlying mechanisms of behavior, and is a very good book for writing for a broad audience. So you don't need to have very technical knowledge about biology. And I recommend definitely. And yeah, so should I start with the topic or?
thank you for that answer. So that's wonderful that you kind of went with your passion and what you love. That's very inspiring. Thank you so much. And please go ahead. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Okay, so today I'm going to talk more broadly about altruism or simile altruism, which can be defined as a behavior of an individual but that benefits another to at its own expense. And if you go a bit to the slides, in the first one, you can see this spectrum of cooperative systems. Just as an introduction, perhaps the most famous forms of altruism in animals is ants or bees. They have this sociality that they behave basically like a super organism in which you have the reproductive, like the queen, and some males that may fecund the queen, and then you have a lot of sterile workers. But there is also is a basically a continuum degree of cooperation. So it ranges from solitary breeding. Then we find social breeding, which will be groups in which the breeding females live and breed together in the same social group. And group members may cooperate to defend for resources against neighboring groups or to deter predators. And in this case, we will have like there is some philopatry or delayed dispersal in this species. Then we have communal breeders that are groups that include multiple breeding females who share care for the young born in the group. So we'll have the added characteristic of alloparental care. Then we have cooperative breeding, that in which offspring of dominants are cared by their parents and also by non-breeding helpers. And in this case, we have this reproductive scheme in which we have these dominants that breed and then the subordinates that don't breed or they delayed breeding and take care of the offspring. And in the stream, we have a social species, which is a type of obligatory cooperative breeding and normally exceeds like a stream task specialization to the point that in sometimes there is even these morphological differences between classes. So the evolution of cooperation remains a central part of biology. This is since the time of Darwin, he remarking on the origin of species that natural selection will never produce in a being anything injurious to itself, for natural selection acts solely by and for the good of each. So there is a bit of a puzzle of why we find this cooperation or altruism in nature. And the first proposed solution to this problem was that kinship could be an important factor for cooperation. This was then later formalized by Hamilton, is his idea of inclusive fitness theory, which was later on known as kin selection, which states that altruistic cooperation can be favored if the benefits to the recipient, weighted by the genetic relatedness between the recipient and the actor, is bigger than the cost to the actor. So if I'm helping a sibling, then I'm also indirectly passing my genes, right? But if I help a cousin, it's less related. So I will invest less than I will do with my brother, for instance. No, that will be a bit the prediction and the Hamilton. However, this framework lacks explanatory power for the evolution of cooperation in presence of unrelated helpers, which are also pretty common in cooperative breeders. And in addition, if haplodiploid species are excluded, for instance, ants and so on, and bees, it's not clear that the degree of relatedness is consistently higher in cooperative breeders in comparison with other species that live in stable groups but do not breed cooperatively. So in the page 2 of this link, you can see there's a wide range of cooperative breeding animals, and this can also be vertebrates and invertebrates, and we find this in mammals and birds and even fish. So why to provide parental care? As I mentioned before, one explanation is this kin selection with these indirect fitness benefits. And there are different mechanisms to which we can obtain this high relatedness between social partners. So one is limited dispersal or philopatry. However, in those cases, there is also an increasing competition between related individuals, and this is because they compete with group members for reproduction and for resources. So they will be competing with kin as well. So this can hamper the evolution of cooperation. And another mechanism will be kin discrimination. And this can be, for instance, due to environmental cues, as for instance, that you were born in the group and all the members in the group were born there, so you know by the environment that they must be related to you. And another solution is some genetic cues, for instance, self-matching. So if they look like you or if they don't, it can also be due to a similar odor or other cues. Then there is also the possibility that is some direct fitness benefits that is selecting for this alloparental care. One of the hypotheses is the group augmentation hypothesis, which states that if group size offer an improved survival of fecundity, subordinates may help to increase group size. And this can be divided in two types of benefits. There is the short-term benefits, which is when a helper is helping to produce offspring of the breeder, and this offspring is a benefit to the helper while it is a helper. And this can be, for instance, because there is a bigger number of just by the presence of more members in the group, like these safety numbers. You can see this, for instance, in those huge banks of fish. When there is a predator, if you are many, you are just less likely to be predated than you are three, right? Then you are probably a target. But it can also be because they are actively helping. And this can be, for instance, due to predator defense or being vigilant, like we see in mircas, standing, looking in the horizon if they see some predator. Can also be allogrooming. This is pretty common in monkeys. But there are also long-term benefits, and this is in the case that the helper inherits the breeding position in the territory, and these new recruits help in turn to their survival or reproductive outcome. And even though there is a positive correlation in many cooperative breedings between group size and survival, there is very little evidence of this hypothesis. So this is one the hypothesis I will be focusing on in this presentation because I focus this in my research together with kin selection. And the reason why is not too clear whether it is can be a viable hypothesis for the evolution of help is that it may not be resistant to cheaters because helping incurs an individual fitness goals. However, it conveys a communal served benefit, and therefore it may suffer from the classic tragedy of the commons problem. But there are also other hypotheses. There is the so-called pay to stay, in which helping is as a form of paying rent in order to be allowed to be in the territory of the dominants because there is, for instance, lack of territory or because it's very dangerous to be out there alone. So you are basically paying a rent that the breeders will not kick you out and evict you from the territory. It can also be as an exchange with the breeders for parentage acquisition, since in many groups the breeders don't allow subordinates to breed. Then it can be like, okay, if I help you, you let me breed a bit in your territory. It can also be as a sign of social prestige because help is costly. So it can be used as a sign of quality to potential partners. And it can also be to gain parental experience. In many birds, for instance, they normally lose the first clutch due to inexperience, so they can train with the offspring of others and then get better at it. But as I said before, one of the key components for cooperative breeding is not only that they give alloparental care, but also that first they have to form a group, right? So why to delay dispersals in the first place? One of there is many benefits to dispersal. One will be to acquire your own breeding position because you are not allowed to breed in someone else's territory. Also to lower competition for resources and to avoid competition with kin, as I mentioned before, and also to avoid inbreeding, since you are related to those in the group if there is no immigration. On the other hand, why to delay dispersal? There is two main hypotheses for this. One is the benefits of philopatry, which assumes the subordinate obtain benefits from staying in the group. For instance, by raising kin production to increase survival because it's safer to be in the group, or because they want to inherit the territory from the dominants later on. The other hypothesis is the ecological constraints, which states that there is ecological factors that constrain helpers to disperse and breed. And this can be due to habitat saturation or habitat quality and or predation pressure. And therefore, the ecological context is very important. However, there is not a clear which kind of environment selects for cooperation. As we see in page 5 in the diagram I sent before, there is a comparative and biological study that suggests that both benign and harsh environments, as well as fluctuating and stable environments, can favor the evolution of cooperative breeding, which creates this paradox between environment quality and sociality. And in the left figure, what you can see is that the environmental hardness and the probability of cooperation. So for starlings, they seem to evolve cooperation in unstable and unpredictable environments. However, for hornbills, it is the opposite trend. They seem to have less likelihood to cooperate in harsher conditions. As well, we can see in a phylogenetic study in birds that cooperative breeding seems to be more likely to evolve in benign environment niches, which later on facilitates the invasion of harsher environments. So this is also something that is a key factor to consider when we are talking about cooperative breeding. However, models or looking at the evolution of cooperation have not taken this too much into account. So the aims of my study was to use a theoretical approach to entangle the role of group augmentation from kinship-related benefits for the evolution of cooperative breeding and in different ecological scenarios. And for that, I developed an individual-based model in which helping behavior and dispersal co-evolve. And in order to disentangle this role of kin selection and group dependent benefits, we compare the outcome of these models with a benchmark model in which we remove the influence of relatedness. And in addition, we construct these models in a way that helping and dispersal could be a fixed behavior through the life of individuals, or it could be age dependent, and they may show plasticity through their lives. So in page 6, you can see the life cycle of the model. So first of all, the breeders will reproduce, and how much the productivity of the breeder is function of the accumulative level of help provided by the subordinates. So the more help, the more offspring they will produce. Then those that are in a group, that were helpers or the newborns, they may either decide to stay or to disperse and become dispersed. And at this time, we can also allow the floaters or dispersed individuals to join a group. And in this case, where we set up a randomly selected group. So those that decide to stay in a group, they may help, and this is conditioned also to a genetic predisposition, which will let to evolve together with this dispersal predisposition. And they can also help zero. So we also are not forcing those individuals neither to form a group, neither to help. So we want to see in which conditions will cooperative breeding evolve by itself. And then there is survival round in which the mortality depends on group size. So we assume that there is a benefit of survival even in larger groups. This is of course only the case for breeders and subordinates, not for those that decide to disperse. And those that help had a cost in their survival because helping is costly. And then if the breeder dies, then there is a competition to become the new breeder. And the candidates are the subordinates that are in the group together with a sample of floaters. And the likelihood to become a new breeder is increasing with their age. So this plasticity that I mentioned before to their age is actually a plasticity with their likelihood to, is compared to the likelihood that they may become breeders. And then those that are still alive increase one age and the cycle repeats. And so now what we see, the results, when we compare group augmentation and case selection through different environments, from low mortality to high mortality, is that first of all, when there is no benefits of group size, that will be the triangles in page 7, they do not evolve health, neither they evolve philopatry or delayed dispersal. So it seems that these direct fitness benefits of group size are very important for the evolution of philopatry, and then which enables then the evolution of health. However, what we see then is that in low mortality environments, only those that are, when there is kin selection present, that will be purple points, it can evolve health. So when there is no kin selection acting, because we remove relatedness, we see that they don't evolve health. However, in higher mortality environments, like harsh environments, we see like those green dots that they evolve health, even in the absence of relatedness. So to sum up a bit, the results in benign environments, helping can only evolve through kin selection, while in harsh environments, helping can evolve both by kin selection and group augmentation. And then to go a bit into the age-dependent plasticity, I saw on page 8 the results dividing point we have relatedness present in the model and when we remove it, and then environments that are saturated, so environments that are benign, and environments that are saturated, so they are harsher. And we see that there is quite some difference. So if we look in the environments that are saturated when there is present relatedness, we see that health decreases with age as relatedness decreases with age. Therefore, they are adjusting health to the levels of relatedness in the group. And we also see that there is some dispersal when they are young, and then they just stay in the group. And this is because they try to avoid to compete with kin. If we see in the right panel, when there is no relatedness, there is not this dispersal at young age, which means that they are dispersing to avoid competing with kin for the breeding position. What we also see is that when there is not relatedness in these saturated environments, the level of health has the opposite tendency, which increases with age, which means that increases with the likelihood that they will inherit the territory, and this corresponds with this long-term group augmentation because they are increasing health as their chances to become breeders increases, and therefore the chances that they get those benefits from helping. And then if we look at unsaturated or harsh environments, we see that they have a different shape of dispersal, which is the blue, so that they stay first in the territory when they are young, and when they are enough competitive to try to breed, then they disperse. And therefore, this corresponds to that they stay in the natural territory as a safe haven and help to raise the kin since they are already there. And therefore, they obtain direct and indirect fitness benefits. So to conclude from these experiments or where this model, what we see is that direct fitness benefits from grouping are the main driver for the evolution of philopatry or delayed dispersal. That kin selection is the main responsible for the emergence of alloparental care. However, group augmentation is a sufficient promoter in harsh environments, and that the relative importance of alternative evolutionary forces on the evolution of cooperation depend on the hardness of the environment. So it can evolve both in harsh and benign environments, but through different mechanisms. And this age-dependent dispersal is triggered by group benefits, so protection at home when they're young, and relatedness to reduce competition with kin. And that's all. So you have any questions or comments, I'd be glad to take it.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. It's so interesting. Can I ask you a general question first, like about the research? Um,
Yes.
so, do you think that so far we didn't look at cooperation much in evolution, or it was kind of ruled out all the time, the selfish genes and things like that? Do you think it is, or it was historically because it was so male or man dominated fields that they don't maybe care so much about cooperation on a lot of testosterone, and that's why it wasn't really taken seriously before? Or I don't know. Do you even want to answer that question? I'm sorry. But
So I don't know if this is related. I mean, the thing is that the study of animal behavior is not very old. So it was started by Conrad Lawrence, and that was not so many years ago. So it's a recent field, and it it has been studied a bit under this skin selection theory, uh, because I mean ants are very obvious. Like something has to. Why do they do this, right? I mean, others perhaps were less obvious because you have them to observe them for longer, but ants perhaps are the most striking example of like this huge difference between, I mean, the helpers are not even able to breed in many cases. Some they can, but they have this policy in which the other workers will eat the eggs if someone tries to breed. So it was very difficult to explain why this behavior might come up. Also, I think another reason is that it was very focused on humans. So I feel that there was this bias towards thinking humans are so great, so we can do all this and that. And what we've seen later on in more recent years is that many behaviors that we thought were exclusively humans, like for instance tool use, are not so. It's more of a degree of ability than more of a dichotomous differentiation between animals and humans. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. And yeah, I don't know if you know the work Global Brain from Howard Bloom. He's like a author here in New York City, but he wrote a bunch of books like back in time, and he wrote a whole book about group selection and not just individual selection. It's really
Mhm.
interesting. I don't know if you know it. I know it's a bunch of years old, but it's still worth reading because I think it supports, his theories that he had back then really support a lot the research that you're doing. So it's really interesting to see from that perspective. And he will be also coming here. So if you want to come and interview him, like ask him questions, you're invited
Yeah,
to.
sure.
But I'm not
Thanks.
sure if it. Yeah, he's in here in New York City. He made some science organizations here in the city, which are really interesting. He's an interesting person, very typical New York City person. But
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know personally his work concretely, but I mean, so group selection, as of group selection, how it was initially thought, um, is is known to not be correct. So we know that selection acts to the level of genes, and normally then to the level of individuals because they are the ones carrying the genes, right? However, there is some recent revisions to group selection theory that are kind of renamed to multi-level selection, in which states that if competition mainly occurs between groups, then those characteristics of that will favor certain groups to outcompete other groups may be selected. So ultimately, selection always works at the genetic level, but it can have these kind of levels in which um, it is selected on certain group characteristics. If, for instance, they are better cooperators and outperform other groups, and the other groups then just get eliminated because it's more of a either you survive the whole group or you just die, for instance. In those cases, yes. But how it was initially thought, it has been shown that this is not correct, this group selection. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So I know it goes a little bit away from, and I want to give Dennis opportunity to ask. So, how is that hypothesis? Because I'm not the evolutionary biologist.
Mhm.
So how are these phenomena explained? That, for example, we have a lower percentage in left-handed people, or in theory, just by this approach of individual selection, they shouldn't be around anymore, right? Or a few other traits that are around 5% in the population. The explanation I read so far is that to keep like in the whole group a bigger gene pool, so in case something happens, that maybe those few hold some key to survival of some future environmental stress. That's is there
Mhm.
a change, like how do people explain this?
So first of all, we have to think that selection is not a thought process, right? So selection just happens and it doesn't have like an aim that I want to reach here. Um, so for instance, the eye has been used many times like, oh, this thing that is so complex had to be kind of designed, right? Because else the previous steps were not working. So how do we reach to the eye? And actually, when you see at the eye is as a design perspective is completely wrong. It's the other way. And as we have like this spot that is blind is because it's very poorly designed, which means that all the steps until we reach to this eye had to also somehow be functional. And with this percentage that you say, so selection can be strong and can be weak. So if there is some characteristic that is not strongly selected against, this can also just survive. And it's also might depend if the environment changes, as you mentioned before, right? So maybe some forms that were very well adapted, when there is an environmental change, they are not so well adapted anymore, and then a new a form that was before not so well adapted now becomes more adapted. So this means that in general it's good to have variance in a population. So when all the population is basically the same, it's not resistant to change, and it's better to have some variation to adapt to a changing environment. But it's not that evolution thought, oh, we should keep a few in case something changes, right? It might be just because of the selection was not strong enough, or just because there was an environment before that was favoring this, and now it's favoring a different phenotype. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your
Yeah,
question.
yeah, it's perfect. So much. No, it's a perfect. And but these are the kind of questions people ask around evolution. So yeah, thank you for answering them. And then Dennis, do you want to ask a question?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Irene, for this really amazing presentation. I was, in the discussion listening to it, I was curious. This falls outside the realm of academia, but I can't help but wonder what traditional cultures have to say about these phenomena. And also, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? That variability actually is, and the key to resilience in whether it's at population level or even an individual level. Yeah, those are my comments for this time.
Yeah, definitely. And now also with climate change, we have a more changing environment, so this variability is even more important than it used to be. And the species that have, for instance, very decimated, I don't know, due to habitat fragmentation, whatever, there is few individuals, there is a lot of inbreeding, which is in itself a problem because there is deleterious mutations that will not get rid of, but also they are less different between them, so they are also less resistant to change.
I'm trying to think of an ecosystem on the planet where it's just one dominant species, even if you're talking about a terrestrial monocrop, like a farm field where all they grow is corn for hundreds of miles, there's still diversity in the environment. There are birds, insects, there's soil microbiota, and like without these elements, actually the system collapses. So I think that diversity is really something that we should be encouraging in policy and practice.
Yes, I mean, maybe a very good example is what happened in Yellowstone National Park. So they basically removed the wolf, and that caused a cascade of events because it was a key predator. And then, I mean, I don't remember exactly all the details, but basically there started to be a lot more of game, which ate all the grass. Then the birds left, even the beavers left. So it changed the course of the rivers, and they reintroduced the wolf later on, and it restored the ecosystem again. The beavers came back. The river started to have these walls by the beavers, which make it less strong. There was less erosion. There was less grass eaters. Then the birds came back, and the whole ecosystem restored. And this is talking about one species. So sometimes it even depends of like one key species or so that makes a huge difference in the ecosystem. So the more variability, the more resistant it is to change. If there was perhaps another species that could have replaced the wolf in its role in the ecosystem, but sometimes is very fragile, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, that biodiversity is very important.
Yeah, that's a great point. There are several studies. The wolf studies are pretty good in terms of being able to paint a picture of how important they are in the aquatic ecosystem. You can look at sharks, and there are examples all over the place.
Yeah.
I
Sharks is
think,
another problem. They are hunting them a lot, and they breed very slow, so they have a lot of problem to be restored. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And then, it's interesting that you mentioned sort of this idea of redundancy in species at the species level. So if species one does service X, then having 3 or 4 more specialized. I mean, you can look at finches or lots of avians to see this dynamic, and a lot of them hyper specialized. So it's not like you were saying, habitat fragmentation or other sorts of resources that they're unable to access at that time. The specialists actually have more less resistance to the change because they're not generalists. They only eat this one thing, and if you remove that thing from the environment, well, then that's gone. But so it's interesting as a double-edged sword, the specialism versus the generalists. But even if you're designing a spaceship, NASA's best standards are triple redundant. Like you have to have backup systems. So that's engineers can understand this. It's very frustrating that policymakers cannot.
Yeah, ecosystem the same. You need the backups. Something happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a question that's again maybe so there were a few recent publications concerning about if humans live by themselves for a prolonged time, it's really bad for their health and they have lower life expectations. I wanted to ask, is there data that having this cooperative breeding, does it increase or slow down aging, basically, also in animals? Like, did you try to isolate individuals for a while, or for a prolonged time, and then see them maybe age faster or become sick or something like?
Uh, so yeah, this is not my area exactly of expertise. However, I mean, not to the individual level, like you mentioned, that humans in isolation, yeah, they survive less time. That's even seems to be worse than smoking. Of course, it may depend if whether it's a chosen thing or imposed. So being solitary. In animals, what we do see is that there is a correlation between the degree of sociality and life expectancy. Not to the individual level, but to the species level. Those that the species that have cooperation, they seem to live longer than those that do not cooperate. However, this is a correlation, and the causation is not well understood. It's not understood in the sense of it could be the other way, that because you live long, you can also benefit more of cooperation and so on. But for instance, a good example is mole rats. Mole rats have, depends which species of mole rats, but they have a similar system in naked mole rats, for instance, to ants. This eusociality is one of the few vertebrates that have this extreme specialization between dominants and workers, more similar to what we find in ants. And other type of rodents, they live like up to 2 years, and this can live up to 20. So it's a big difference. But again, it is not known exactly the direction of this correlation, which is the causation link, but there seems to be a general link between cooperative breeding and long-lived animals. Yeah.
That is so interesting. I wish I spoke with you earlier, because last Friday we had a guest speaker here. He looks at gene mutations across species, really a lot of species, like from whales to rodents. He works with zoos and different organizations and wildlife, um, and then he gets some specimens, like some tissue, and then looks at mutation at also at different ages, and to figure out what protects some animals from like aging and cancer specifically. For example, whales, they are so huge, they should get cancer pretty easily, but they don't. So to look at
Mhm.
different aging mechanisms, but the mostly he looked at was carnivore versus plant eaters, because based on like
Mhm.
data from humans. But this would be a really cool way to sort the data, collaborative species versus non-collaborative species. So yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll write to him and tell him about it. So yeah, that is really interesting. So does the size vary? Like, are collaborative species in general smaller, or are they, it doesn't really make any changes in their size?
uh, that I know of, I don't know any correlation between size of the individuals. Uh, but for instance, what we know, I also work with fish, so I not only do models, I also do experiments, and those that are cooperating, they have delayed growth, and this is can be because they are working, so they can either they cannot eat as much as they would want, or because also there is this competition with dominance. So in species where there is a strong dominance competition, they may better not grow too much, because else they get too close to the size of the dominant, and then may be a fight happening for saying who is more dominant than the other. So sometimes it's better just to avoid competing and just grow when you want to reproduce. So we see this, that just before they are going to disperse and try to breed, they increase growth a lot. They have apparently some reserves to speed up growth, and this is also probably because of this competition as well. So yeah, I don't know of this correlation between size um, and cooperation, but there is an effect of in growth and size for those that are helping. Yeah.
That is so interesting. Thank you so much, and that is really cool.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Maybe I should introduce you to Alex Kagan. He's in the UK doing research. Maybe you guys should talk. So yeah, Denise, did you have another question? I kind of cut you off there, so I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I can't think of anything right now. Sorry, I'm also a little busy on my side.
Yeah, I had another question in the meantime. So when you look at these different environments, right? You say the benign environments and the harsh environments, they actually act very differently. Did you maybe, or are you planning to maybe in the future look at maybe gene expression changes, or some molecular changes that maybe happen that induce this change in behavior, or some neural activity, or is there anything that kind of points like what happens in the body that they will change this behavior? Is there anything going in that direction?
Yeah, I'm not molecular expert, but there is definitely people looking into these things, like what happens during the lifetime of an individual and what changes does this produce. There is not too much research on this, like the environment and the different selective pressures that it has in this type of behavior. Normally, because like I kind of mentioned before, it is really not know much about what mechanisms are selecting cooperation. So kin selection has been more broadly studied, and there seems to be quite some proof that this is a key factor, but there is not too much on this direct fitness benefits. So there is a lot of scope to investigate more on this. Yeah. And yeah, there is for sure some molecular changes, but yeah, I'm not an expert in this. I cannot say.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, it would be just interesting to see if there are like hormonal changes, or maybe epigenetic changes that trigger this switch and becoming more supportive. Like if scarcity induces like something in the brain, or in epigenetic mechanisms, it kind of change.
Well,
Yep.
the only thing I do know is that there seems to be maternal effects. So in some species, there is research that says that, for instance, if the parents grew in a particularly harsh year, and then the offspring has a different reaction to the environment in their helping or their behavior. So there seems to be some maternal effects there. Yeah.
So Victoria is asking in the chat if you have a book that's really good to learn about, your area of research, that you would recommend that people could read to kind of learn more about your field. that you think it's really great or really interesting?
I don't know about particularly cooperation, like like more broad, but like I mentioned before, for more broad audience in behavior, I definitely recommend the self-esteem. Like it's super interesting. You'll also learn a lot about your own behavior and how it's shaped, and it's very easy to understand. And I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, that's a really great book. I agree. It's wonderful. Thank you. Hi, Serena. How are you? Do you want to? I know you just arrived, so I'm not sure. Do you have a question, or did you want to say something?
Oh no, I'm on the road. I popped in. I'm sorry I'm late, but just got here, so I'll listen.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks for coming by. Denise, go ahead.
I had another addition to that. If you want to get an idea of general population dynamics or a broader view, I would even suggest there are probably textbooks you can find online. I don't have anything specific, sorry, but I remember going through my undergraduate coursework and this stuff. There were entire sections, if not chapters, on this topic, so that could also be a place to start for people.
Yeah. Do you like? For how long? Is there a time scale that like that you could keep this harsh environment, and does this behavior stay, even like if you, let's say, keep the harsh environment for a few generations, would there ever be, or did you see any switch in between that although the environment is that way, or is it very stable throughout different generations?
I mean, this is probably an evolved behavior of the conditions that they grew up, so it will be very, I guess, unrealistic that suddenly everything is benign. What I can say is that we do have fish in the lab which are they are cooperative breeders, and they have this harsh environment because there is a lot of predation, and in the lab there is no predation at all, and they saw the same behaviors as you see in the field. There is no real difference. So it probably takes quite some time, some evolutionary time to make any difference, I would guess.
Yeah, because what I'm asking is, if you keep the harsh environment for several generations, the ones that are supportive should die out over time, right? Because they don't give their gene, they don't pass on their gene. And I was wondering if there at some point is some mechanisms. So can you predict which of the ones that breed, can you predict their offspring who will become a supporter, or who will become the actual breeder? Is there some indication? I don't know, they are bigger, they're like, is there some indicator who becomes who?
Uh, yeah, I mean, that depends of the species. There has to be. For instance, in my fish, it's just the bigger wins because dominance is highly linked to size, and they have indeterminate growth. So those that are bigger just are stronger competitors, and they will take over the breeding position. In other species, there is, for instance, some wasps in that is known that they know who is going to be the next, but we don't see any difference. So there has to be something, we just don't know what. And in this thing that you said, cooperative and non-cooperative, if the environment changes, Actually, you can go to the page 5 of this thing I sent before. There is this diagram with cooperative, non-cooperative, benign, and harsh environment, and there you can see with the thickness of the arrows how likely is those transitions happen. So there seems to be that the most likely transition is that a species that is cooperative, then they can invade a harsh environment because it will be more resistant to the hardness, like for instance, if there is not much rainfall and it's very difficult to find food, or there is a lot of predators, being in a cooperative group might be beneficial. And being already in a cooperative group allows you to survive while others will not survive. So it definitely can't just die out the behavior of cooperating or not, but it can offer a new opportunity to invade a different type of habitat that others will not survive in.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's you know, if there's like a predisposition, some genetic or some gene expression mechanism for you to become a supporter, this works really well for you in general if the stress is kind of short-lived, right? But with climate change and how the environment is changing, this is more likely to become a prolonged state for a lot of species. And yeah, my question is if that cooperative breeding will survive in the future or not, because for that individual, for those individuals, if this stress stays that way, it doesn't really make any sense because they will never have the opportunity to pass on their gene. So that's why I'm asking if if you maybe have a plan or somebody has a plan to continuously expose them to the stress for generations, just to predict basically what will happen in the future to species that have this cooperative breeding strategy.
Yeah, like I mentioned before in this image, there seems that those that so in if they live in a benign environment, no, this cooperative species, and then the environment becomes harsher, there seems that there is many that will be able to stay in the harsh environment more those that are cooperative than those that are not cooperative. So what it means is that those that are cooperative, they can buffer the stressor of a harsh environment better by cooperating than those that do not cooperate. I mean, of course, that would depend on the species, but there seems to be that cooperation buffers this environmental challenge and allows you to continue. Yeah. So I will expect that in even more that there will be a higher maybe rate of cooperation with climate change, perhaps because they kind of survive maybe better than others that do not cooperate. But that I don't know. Yes, it's a very interesting question, and for sure will be interesting to see this how climate change will affect cooperation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It could be my very uneducated point of view, is that would be if this cooperation survives, although it's really bad actually for a bunch of individuals in the group because they don't get to pass on their specific, gene patterns, then this the theory that there's that the individual genetic content basically is the main driver doesn't really make too much sense to me. Then it's more a group evolution.
No, because for instance, so with kin selection, right? So maybe you don't pass your genes yourself and you die, but if you manage to help those that are related to you to produce more offspring, then your genes of those cooperative genes will survive through someone else. So in those groups that they are cooperative genes, if they are together, right, then they are helping to make more copies of those genes. While if you don't have the cooperative gene, then those around you also don't have it, and they don't help you to produce more, right? So they are more likely to get extinct.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. So, Denise, does anyone in the audience have more questions? Because we are on the hour. Yeah, go ahead, Denise.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the size element varying by species in terms of fitness for taking over the dominant role in breeding. It's interesting because with ants this can be seen, but then with geese it's not. So I do wonder what the dynamics there are. Obviously, there's an equity issue where there's more equity when the sizes are the same. But in terms of, it's really interesting, right? Because you have to look at it from the individual and then the group level or the population level. So like Katerina was saying, some selfish individuals want to pass on their gene pattern, and then there are others that are more or less concerned with that. They're more concerned with the cooperation of the groups. It's very interesting to see those dynamics play out over species and time.
Uh, Yeah, I mean, that also depends then on this reproductive skew, whether it's more skew or not. And that is a highly debated topic. So there is like two main trends on this. Those that say that basically the breeders make concessions to those subordinates to allow them to breed, maybe in a sense of reproduction, of help or something like that. And also those that have an incomplete control, and then they cannot prevent all of them to reproduce. And of course, this depends of dominance, and it can be based on size, but it can also be based on strength or other qualities. And some are a bit more cryptic to us to know which is the difference. But there has to be some differences, definitely. And yeah, so in comparative breeds, even those that have high skew, there is normally still some degree of shared parenthood. There's some, I mean, yeah, some try to breed as well, those that are subordinates. In ants, for instance, a bit different story because they have like this different genetics, which they have these, the males have are haploid and the females are diploid, and the relatedness is a bit more complicated there. But there is also this difference in morphology, which is determined very early. So it's also difficult maybe for one that's develop as a worker then to reproduce. And when they reproduce, the thing is that the queen maybe can lay 100 eggs, and while you can lay one. So looking into this kin selection by Hamilton, it's even better for you to help the queen to reproduce because it is way more efficient at that than to reproduce yourself. It still sometimes happens, and like I said, they have this policy in which other ants will kill the eggs of anyone that will try to breed. But it may even pay to you by genetics that someone else reproduces when you are not as efficient as, for instance, the queen in ants.
Well, is it always so rational though? I read a recent publication that, and then there was also like a news talking about this that, for example, there's also sexual selection, right? Where it's just being pretty, like in birds, and there's this very interesting cricket species in India that the ones that usually the ones that can make the loudest sounds are the most attractive ones, and they get more offspring. But there are individuals that that use kind of holes in the plants to amplify their voices, so they are actually not loud.
Are you kidding me? So awesome.
They're actually quite weak. They are actually quite weak and small and stuff, but because they use this amplifier, they get just as much or more to reproduce as the ones that are, actually, loud and strong crickets. So sexual selection is kind of tricky, right? I mean,
The
also
musician
in
cricket.
I mean, also what is pretty over time in humans, it doesn't really make too much sense a lot of times. There are very pretty people that have totally screwed up genes, like underneath. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
interesting.
selection is not perfect. And in this case, those crickets are using a bias in the females and taking their profits. Yeah. So to the female, that is not in their advantage because the offspring will be weak. But maybe even not in their advantage, because the thing is that if those that are louder reproduce more, then what you want is that your sons will also be loud. And if your sons are making the same trick and they get as many females or even more, then good for you. Then you are passing your genes as well. So yes, it's not perfect and you can use these tricks. I mean, that is one trick, but sometimes it's even there is another male, like small and quiet and looks like a female, gets close to the male. And when the other females comes, this small and female-like male reproduces with the females, and it was attracted by another one, but he sneaked in. And like this, there are many examples. Yeah.
That's so
So.
funny.
So
Wow.
yeah, at the end, what matters is that you make a lot of copies of you, and however the means. And prettiness, of course, is a proxy of your quality. I mean, not only your genes, but maybe also your condition. Like if you are well fed, means also that probably you have good genes. But of course, you can. It's not a perfect waltz, and you can trick with your looks, and then your genes are screwed. Have a heart disease that is not showing, whatever.
That reminds me of
So.
cowbird. That this is this bird in South America, and they don't trick to breed, but they trick to rear, which is they will go into another bird's nest and just leave their egg there. It's substantially similar. The other one can't tell it until it's hatched. So they just pawn off their egg on another species, and I
Fruit
feel like take care of it.
parasitism, yeah. Well, I mean, the famous one is the cuckoo, right? The eggs are not even similar. Like it's like 3 times the size of the other eggs. And as when the bird burns, it kicks all the other eggs out of the nest, and then the parents are growing this huge chick that is bigger than the parents, but they are not able to discriminate it. So there is like this arm race between those are parasitic and those that are the host to distinguish between each other. So the parasitic to try to hide like the eggs or whatever, and the others to recognize this. No, it's just this armed race. It's called the Red Queen, like from Alice in Wonderland, because you have to always move to stay in the same place, right? And that also happens, for instance, within immune system and viruses. So the viruses are always evolving to try to make you sick, while you are always evolving to confront these new challenges, right? So we see this a lot in nature. This very interesting.
I actually wonder if there isn't some sort of pheromone response or something taking place. Like you said, the size differential is just like, what? How does this happen? So there has to be a reason for it. Maybe that egg smells better than their eggs or something. The way that toxoplasma
That
does.
definitely tricking them. I don't know how. It might also be frequency dependent. So some behaviors, if you do it too much, then of course they will evolve something to make sure that this is not happening, else they get stinged because all your eggs are getting kicked out and you are raising someone else. But if it's very rare occasions, so maybe just 5% of the population are receiving those parasitic eggs, maybe there's not a strong selection to identify those eggs. And you also incur the risk to throw your own eggs out of the nest by this mechanism to recognize them. So it's not always so easy, and it depends maybe if it's not super often happening, maybe there's not a strong selection to differentiate it. But yeah, it can also be some other mechanism that is not visual, of course.
Well, yeah, this is really interesting, such an interesting discussion, but we went already over the hour, so I want you to give the opportunity to get a break from us. But yeah, thank you so much for clarifying so many different questions and for your really interesting work. It's really amazing. So yeah, we wish you all the best also for your new start in New York City. um, yeah, and yeah, we wish you a lot of luck. And are you going to stay in the same type of research in evolutionary biology?
Yes, so yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. And yeah, like if anyone has further questions or whatever, you can always write to me. I'm happy to answer and to discuss and learn more. And yes, I plan to continue research on this area. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. I'm so glad. And yeah, also feel always free to come back here and maybe you can update us with your new research when you something that you want to share with us. Yeah, reach out anytime, or maybe I'll check in with you at some point, because it would be interesting to see what you're doing next and follow your path as a scientist. That's really interesting. And yeah, thank you so much, and thank you
Yeah, thank
everyone
you.
for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for the question in the chat. And yeah, follow the club if you like discussions like these. We will have Dr. Akira Kabuto here talking about his molecular robots. And it's all about collaboration today here on 9 p.m. EST, and how he managed to have design molecular robots that cooperate and behave in swarms, which is really interesting. So somehow it was by chance, like it was random that today everything is about cooperation. So thank you, Irene, and yeah. I hope when you come to New York City, maybe we can meet in person one day. It would be
Yeah, we'll let you know.
yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. And I hear you all back soon. So I'll close the room in 3, 2, 1. Bye, everyone. Thank you.